Production-Linked Incentive Scheme for Smartphones and IT Hardware. The central government is set to launch a new production-linked incentive (PLI scheme) to promote domestic production of high-end smartphone components and other IT hardware in India. So what is PLI scheme? What are the other PLI schemes in this area? Before we know more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel for useful new content on investing in India, government policies, industry analysis, business and commercial laws and companies. PLI scheme is a scheme that aims to give companies incentives on incremental sales from products manufactured in domestic units. It was first launched in April 2020, and over a period of time, hundreds of companies were approved in 13 industries, and more recently, with the addition of drones, it now covers 14 sectors. PLI are essentially the incentives to companies to boost production. The incentives will be given for up to 6 years and would be generally between 4% to 6% of incremental production value. We have a full video on the PLI schemes. You will find the link for the video in the description box. The proposed new PLI scheme is in part necessary because of the success of the earlier PLI schemes, particularly for the manufacture of mobile phones. This has created a very large demand for high-end components for smartphones. Meanwhile, let us look at the earlier PLI schemes in electronic sectors. Electronics. Prior to the announcement of this PLI scheme, electronics manufacturing in India was already growing at a compound annual growth rate of around 23% during the last 5 years. With domestic production of electronics hardware touching $76 billion in 2019 to 20, the purpose of this PLI was to accelerate this trend. In order to position India as a global hub for electronic system design and manufacturing and push further the vision of National Policy on Electronics 2019, 3 schemes, namely the Production-Linked Incentive Scheme, Scheme for Promotion of Manufacturing of Electronic Components and Semiconductors, and Modified Electronics Manufacturing Cluster Scheme were notified in April 2020. A 4th scheme, namely the Production-Linked Incentive Scheme for IT Hardware, was notified in March 2021. Scheme 1. Production-Linked Incentive Scheme for Large-Scale Electronics Manufacturing. The first phase of the PLI scheme was dedicated to the large-scale electronics manufacturing sector, and the scheme proposed to increase the manufacturing of mobile phones in India along with setting up their assembly, testing, marking and packaging units. The total cost proposed for the scheme was INR 40,995 crores. The scheme has given incentives of 4% to 6% of incremental sales to the approved companies for a period of 5 years. In the second round, this PLI scheme was extended in April 2021 to include specified electronic components. Incentives of 3% to 5% of the incremental production for a period of 4 years were offered to the approved companies. It was set up to benefit a few global investors and domestic manufacturers in India. With high potential for employment generation, the scheme is expected to generate employment for 2 lakh people in 5 years in the electronics manufacturing sector. As of September 2022, the PLI scheme for large-scale electronics manufacturing attracted investments of Rs 4,784 crore and led to a total production of Rs 2,03,952 crore. Including exports of Rs 80,769 crore, the production of mobile phones has risen from about 6 crore in 2014 to 15 to around 31 crore in 2021 to 22. The PLI scheme for large-scale electronics manufacturing had attracted leading global players including Foxconn, Samsung, Pegatron, Rising Star and Wistron. It also saw domestic companies such as Lava, Micromax, Optimus, United Telelinks, Neolinks and Paget Electronics take part. Scheme 2. Production-Linked Incentive Scheme for IT Hardware. The Production-Linked Incentive Scheme for IT Hardware proposes a financial incentive to boost domestic manufacturing and attract large-scale investments in the value chain. The scheme seeks to incentivize companies to utilize the existing installed capacity to fulfill the increasing domestic demand. Product-linked incentives of up to INR 7,350 crores will be awarded over a period of 4 years to the companies approved under this scheme. The companies which applied and were approved include Dell, Rising Stars, InfoPower, Optimus, VVDN, Dixon, Flectronics, Bhagwati Products, NetWeb, Panache, ICT, Lava, Neolink, and Smile. However, the above scheme does not find too much favor with the IT hardware industry. Government is considering plans to increase outlay from Rs 7,350 crores to Rs 19,000 crores and increase incremental sales incentives from 2 to 4% to 3 to 6%. A new scheme is likely to be announced soon to cover this sector. Additional components in discussion to be to the scheme are PCB, PCBA, battery pack, power module, mechanics, display panel, memory modules, microprocessors, etc. These schemes are managed by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. There are other incentive schemes for the promotion of electronics manufacturing in India. These include Scheme 3, Scheme for Promotion of Manufacturing of Electronic Components and Semiconductors. The Scheme for Promotion of Manufacturing of Electronic Components and Semiconductors aims to strengthen the manufacturing ecosystem for electronic components and semiconductors. Target manufacturing of electronic components and semiconductors through the scheme will help meet domestic demand, increase value addition, and promote employment opportunities in this sector. Incentives of up to INR 3,285 crores will be awarded under the scheme over a period of 8 years. Scheme 4, Modified Electronics Manufacturing Cluster Scheme. This scheme will fortify the linkage between domestic and international market by strengthening supply chain responsiveness, consolidation of suppliers, decreased time to market, lower logistic costs, etc. The development of industry-specific facilities like common facility centers, ready-built factory, sheds, plug-and-play facilities will not only strengthen supply chain responsiveness and promote the consolidation of suppliers, but also decrease time to market and lower logistics costs. Financial incentives of up to INR 3,762 crores will be disbursed over a period of 8 years. The government also has other PLI schemes in related areas such as telecom, solar PV modules, and white goods. These will be covered in separate videos. The government tweaked the Rs 76,000 crore incentive schemes for semiconductors and display manufacturing units, offering to give 50% of the project cost across all categories of factories, as it looks to woo global players such as Intel to set up production base in India to help cut reliance in imports. The government has also launched a special package of incentives to promote the setting up of new plants for the manufacture of semiconductors. The government is offering incentives up to 50% of the project costs to all categories of factories to woo global players to set up bases in India. There are at least 3 large-scale investments announced in this area, including that of joint venture between Foxconn and Vedanta. We will cover this in a separate video on the semiconductor industry.